An area of exploitation that is part of our everyday lives is fast fashion. Fast fashion is defined as cheap, trendy clothing that samples ideas from the catwalk or celebrity culture and turns them into garments at insanely fast speeds, cutting corners in order to meet consumer demands. Typically, fast fashion exploits cheap labor in poor countries with little to no labor laws. So, most, if not all, of the workers in the industry consist of people in poverty. Most of these clothing workshops, called sweatshops, where workers are employed with low wages under dangerous, unhealthy, and oppressive conditions, are located in Asia, making it a large spread issue throughout the continent. Even the European Parliament refers to it as a slave labor to describe the current working conditions in these shops. Labor abuse ranges from child labor to labor from human trafficking, and it is primarily women who work to create the merchandise that these shops sell. Many of the shops claim to pay minimum wage. However, that wage is 1/2 to 1/5 of the needed living wage. So living conditions are not ideal for those who work in these sweatshops. Not only are workers being paid extremely low wages, but they are forced to work in unhealthy and unsafe environments, often being forced to work 14 to 16-hour days for 7 days a week, and sometimes even in the early mornings. They usually work with no ventilation, breathing in toxic substances, and inhaling fibers and sand in unsafe buildings. Many accidents occur, including equipment malfunctions and fires, as well as the spread of diseases on these sites. If their daily target is not met, many are verbally and physically abused, being denied any breaks or water. Therefore, overtime is never refused as the wages are already low as it is, and also of the fear of being fired. But in some cases, overtime does not count as paid hours. These conditions worsen as the demand of clothes is constantly and rapidly increasing. In most factories, garment workers are not allowed to form unions to protect their rights, as many laws and reputations export zones do not allow the formation of labor unions. Not only does fast fashion affect workers, but it affects the general public due to the large amount of population pollution it creates. It accounts for up to 8% of the world's global carbon emissions and 9% of the microplastic emissions in the ocean annually. Textile dyeing is the second largest water pollutant in the world, with most companies using 2,000 gallons to make a single pair of jeans. This creates large amounts of excess, and with new lines coming out, there will be more consumption of these products. Every second, one garbage truck of fast fashion is thrown in landfills or burned. Many fast fashion companies that are seen regularly throughout the U.S. include Zara, H&M, Forever 21, Shein, Temu, Fashion Nova, and many other stores. Despite many people knowing that fast fashion companies such as these are susceptible to scams, using cheap and toxic material, many still contribute to the revenue of these companies by paying for cheaper clothing that appear to be expensive. The costs are reduced, but production is increased. Ultimately,
Fast fashion is an issue that has just recently come to light in the public, and more is continually being learned about the atrocious conditions. Many agencies are fighting for the use of more sustainable products in the fast fashion industry, such as eco-friendly textile dyes, greening products, and developing eco-labels and certifications. A new act introduced by Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is called the Fabric Act, which aims to make sure that fashion companies abide by supply chain transparency, safe labor conditions, and fair wages, enabling stakeholders to hold fast fashion companies accountable for malpractices. It is the first federal fashion bill that addresses the issue of fast fashion, directly combating the treacherous issues in the United States. While it is hard to do much at the policy level than what has already been done, the public can do a lot to minimize the impact of fast fashion. One example is through the use of social media, where celebrities can be used to influence the general public. Another idea is the idea of having a rental market for clothing, reducing waste and throwaway culture in clothing. This would allow people to rent pieces of clothes that would otherwise only be worn once and return those articles of clothing to be recycled by other people for use. Another solution many are pushing is for the long-term use of clothing instead of buying into consumerism, buying sustainable pieces that will last long-term. Avoid fast fashion stores and instead purchase high-quality clothing that will last a long time, negating the need to continually purchase more and more clothing to replace the cheap pieces purchased. If that is not an option, as high-quality pieces are typically expensive, people can look at thrift stores to purchase recycled clothing that would otherwise go to waste. These stores are often a product of fast fashion, but instead of ending up in landfills, they are given to thrift stores to allow the reuse of unwanted pieces of clothing. People could also donate their old clothes they no longer wear, giving to people who do not have as many options instead of throwing out these clothes that will end up in landfills.